campus so quiet.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tamara Al-Maayed, one of your head prefects. I'm so honored to be here today to discuss the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. This day of awareness was established by the United Nations to tackle the issue of gender-based violence. Our panel today aims to educate and raise awareness on this important matter in order to work towards a safer future for our women. I will now be handing over to Kavish to introduce our discussion topic for today.
Hi everybody, thank you so much for watching. For those of you who know me, my name is Kavish and I'm also one of your head prefects at the school. Today we're going to be speaking with some amazing people about working towards a safer future for women and considering the implications of violence against women, as Tamara said, because of this day today. And so now I'm going to hand over to Anushka to introduce one of our first speakers and get this discussion going.
Hello, my name is Anushka Subin, and I'm also one of your head prefects, and I would like to welcome Ms. Shameen Islam. Would you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I am the president of the Pakistani Women's Association in Bahrain. It is this association has been there for the last 23 years, working relentlessly on active social causes. I don't know what else to say. Sorry, does this get cut?
No, that's all right. Thank you. I'll ask you the first question then.
Sorry.
Don't worry. But how do you believe that awareness and treatment of violence against women differs within each culture and country? For example, within some countries it is considered taboo to speak out.
Because we come from underprivileged countries, I will not name them, of course, violence is a taboo. And it's ingrained in that taboo is ingrained in the generations. It is for various reasons. The lack of education, for one, the social culture, the lack of teaching of ethics. I'm not saying that it is restricted to underprivileged countries, but since I am from one of them, I can say about that. So it's a big taboo ingrained in society.
Now moving on, we'd like to introduce one of our second speakers. We have with us Ms. Vandana Kishore, who is a volunteer for Shamsaha, one of the only domestic abuse hotlines in the whole of Bahrain, as well as a counselor and therapist at PGF and a social worker at the Women's Forum. So if you would like, please could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, you gave a lot about me. That's all about it. But personally, I'm a life coach, NLP practitioner and a coach. Like you said, counselor. So volunteering, social work is my passion. So you can carry on asking the questions.
Yeah, so linking into social work, you've done a lot of work into volunteering. And so by doing this work, have you seen firsthand the direct effect of violence against women? And if so, what do you think is the most significant effect?
Yes, I have witnessed it and I have handled most of the cases, but then, the first thing that happens is that women need emotional support in first place because there happens a lot of low esteem. They're pulled down by the perpetrator and they lack self-esteem, confidence, and it always surrounds around them in a cycle that they cannot get out of the situation. So that's where we help them, give them confidence, bring out the self-esteem in them, and help them to choose their life that deserve it.
Definitely, and I think a lot of people overlook the psychological effects onto domestic violence.
True.
And so based on that, what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about domestic violence?
It's not one to be named. Firstly, the victim themselves feel that they can never get out of the situation or the relationships because of various factors that are surrounding there, be it the children, the financial support, emotional trauma, or the trauma bonding to be, precise. So there are a lot of factors that surround and shackle them to not get out of the situation. They are always under the impression that they have to carry out their life living in the hill. So that should be broken first, and then they have to be guided to properly train into the proper organizations or people who are trained to equip them with all the needed resources to help them come out of the situation.
Thank you for that answer. So hello everyone, I'm Charlotte, and I just want to hand over to Miss Susie Kanu just to introduce herself.
Okay, sorry. I'm Susie Kanu. I'm CEO of a old established family business, first woman actually CEO right now. And I'm also a poet. I'm an author of a book called Here I Speak, Letters from Arab Women. And I'm also a tech investor, and I'm also an entrepreneur and many other things. But I wanted to write about this topic, Here I Speak, Letters from Arab Women. It's a book about empowering women in many different ways. So I think that's probably why you have me on this panel. More than the fact that I'm a CEO. I think you want me on the panel because I believe in women empowerment.
Definitely. So on the topic of women empowerment, obviously your book is such an important, mouthpiece for Arab women, and you really amplified those voices. What do you think, or which group of people do you think it's impacted or targeted the most?
Actually, I'm shocked. I thought I was only going to be able to target women and maybe Arab women, and as it happens, the Western world is reading the book just as much as the Arabic world is, and it has impacted a lot. I've been asked to speak in so many different countries around the world, and the younger generation are asking me to speak as well, and they like what I've written. So the idea of the book was to reach out. The idea of the book was to have people discuss these topics and not be ashamed of it, to discuss these topics that are otherwise maybe would have been sensitive, and to create awareness that these things are actually happening in our part of the world. Most of us, and especially, can I say, in my region or in our society, they had no idea. These things are actually happening next door. So I think the idea was to create awareness, number one, and to empower women to feel, like she rightly said right next to me, is that the shame should be taken out of feeling it's my fault. We tend to continuously feel it's my fault. If I'm beaten or abused, it's my fault. If something, it's my fault. It's always my fault first, because the abuser wants you to feel that way. So I'm trying to create awareness for that, and many different topics actually in the book. There's it's not about physical abuse, it's about mental abuse, it's about rights, it's about the right to work, the right to speak, the right to ask for extra shares in family businesses. So it's just basically all about women's rights.
That's great, thank you.
So just thinking on the idea of blame and it being the women's fault. All over the world we see the rise of the blame culture, which teaches women preventative measures rather than teaching people who are committing these crimes the correct values. How do you think is the best way to educate people on topics like this?
I think it's by speaking, right? It's by speaking. It's by openly having discussions. I think your generation is doing that by far better than ours ever could, because you're using social media. You're using a platform that we're not exactly accustomed to. We're learning how to use it, but it's not part of us exactly. Your generation is using it, like sort of my daughter, You're using that platform, you're talking openly, and if there is something that maybe say officials say, no, this is fine, your generation is standing up and saying, no, this is wrong. This is wrong, and you have a following, and people actually are starting to listen. So you're not going to stand down, and I like that, So I do think social media has a big role to play in all of this. But I think the first person that has the biggest role to play is yourself. I've noticed you've got to have that confidence within yourself, with you, and then the social media can come in. If you actually believe in something, then everyone else can believe in it too.
Yeah, I completely agree.
I just want to ask a follow-up, but hand this over to Ms. Shameen Islam. So obviously in talking about how it's important to speak up, important prominent people such as yourself as a president of an organization obviously have a platform to do so. But how do you think people with less of a platform, such as the younger generation and students in school, can get involved with speaking out?
So as Ms. Susie said, it's about awareness, and it's about something that may not just happen in one day. So if it has to be the mindset has to change through the generations, and awareness can be on several platforms. So it's not only the education, the ethics, the morals, it's self-love. And it's this point that you have to put out there that don't enable bad behavior. We are taught to enable bad behavior, not obviously consciously, but the way we've seen things progress. So I think a big part of it, as she said, is awareness, and that's the only way you can do it. However, I also feel that people in power also can make a big difference. For example, a very small example is that in Pakistan, in one of our provinces, the right of inheritance, see, our religion has given us the right of inheritance, but of course we don't follow it as a culture. So in Pakistan, for example, the province of Balochistan has just passed a mandate where the woman is not going to leave her right for inheritance. Okay, and that of course enables that woman. It empowers that woman. That needs to follow. So I personally feel it'll have to be in many areas, not just one. And I think the most important is self-love. We have to teach our children, our girls, our boys, to love themselves first. We don't. We just give and we enable.
Yeah, definitely. I think self-love is so important. And on that topic of obviously raising awareness for boys and girls, I think Anushka has a question about that.
Yes. So do you believe that it is important to educate boys from a young age on the violence that is faced by women?
Oh yes, totally. Totally. I think when I tell my children that I think, not that I don't trust my kids, but I think I would be more comfortable with my daughter being alone somewhere than my boys being alone. So I think that has to change. You have to, I'm not saying control your boys, but you have to be on top of it with your boys. You have to teach them respect. You have to teach them so much more that we focus on the girls. So it's equal.
Thank you.
Equality. When you talk about equality, please be equal in teaching the same things to your boys.
It starts at home, doesn't it?
It starts at home.
It starts at home.
Yes,
Yeah.
And so, talking about starting things at home as well, I would like to ask Ms. Bandana a question. So, how do you think that families can provide safety and comfort to housemaids and other domestic workers that also often experience violence against them in the homes?
Families, be it families or the neighbors, the neighborhood, first thing that they have to do is pick up the signs. If at all there is a domestic violence happening anywhere, they have to pick up the signs, because domestic violence is not something that happens out of no reason. It might start up and it doesn't stop. It only escalates all the time. So we have to be aware of the signs and the symptoms of the victims, and be always vigilant and entertain and encourage them to come forward to report, because someone else reporting for them doesn't take any weightage. It is always the victim who should fight for it. People can provide safety measures, but what if they're going through a mental trauma? Psychological violence is not seen, it's not visible, it's hidden. So what do we do about them? What measures can we provide for them? The victim has to fight for themselves. Self-love, yes, it does play. But first of all, a treatment, like if you can find out a sign that she's psychologically getting into trouble, then the families or whoever is supporting her can give her a mental health treatment. Refer them to doctors, take them to practitioners or therapists, give them all the support they can. But at the end of the time, it's the victim who has to fight for it and come out of it.
Yeah, completely agree. So just based on your experience working with these victims, how can all of us listening be more supportive in creating a safe space for them?
Yes, all of us support. I would suggest you involve yourself with their experiences, but yes, always do refer them. Like I said before, refer them to a person who's equipped with skills. You know what happens all the time? The person who's involved in listening to their experience or encountering what they're going through, they fall into a trap of secondary trauma. Right? Your brain starts to receive and experience what they're going through. What they have gone through sometimes may not be so exaggerated, but what our brains do is that we put our own experiences from past and we go through a lot of things. So that means we're not equipped well, we don't have tools to handle such situations. So it's always better to put them forward to the referred resources or the person who's resourceful to treat them. And yes. Come again with the question, please.
It was just how can we all listen and be supported and create
Yes,
a safe space?
listen. The word itself says, if at all you cannot do anything, just be there for the person to listen to them. Just be there. Don't get too much attached to it, but then just be there to listen. Make sure that, that little support that, yes, someone is listening, because they're always kept in aloof most of the times to keep them away from the communication, interaction with the world. They're all kept in a, closed environment. That's how the victims are treated most of the cases. So when you're there to listen to them, they feel that, yes, I have someone to support me. That's how you can stay there with your active listening without judgments.
Thank you.
So on the topic of sort of listening to women's experiences and having them amplify what they've gone through, I just wanted to, for anyone who's willing to answer this question, again sort of bring up this idea of victim blaming. So how can we listen to women's experiences and open them up for the world to see without kind of keeping this idea that it's just a woman's problem with violence?
Yeah, that clearly explains that. People think that's another misconception. People think women's violence is concerns about only women. No, it involves men, it involves women, it involves children, their mental health, the whole society, the upbringing of the children, their growth for future. It's all the society. Everything is linked in. It's not only about women. What's happening there when women are exposed to such violence at home, whatever kind of violence it is, kids are also exposed. They're led to watch and witness, become secondary victims as well. Sometimes there are things that perpetrator can do to hurt the victim. They hurt the kids, indirectly, and threaten things of various kinds of psychological things can happen. And what's happening here is that kids are shown and set an example by the mother or the victim themselves that it's okay. Two things, that it's okay to get hurt and it's okay to hurt someone. That example should not be set, like Ms. Shameen said rightly, it should happen at home, and kids should be taught that it's not okay. That's when the mother or the victim takes a step forward to make a report and show that, well, irrespective of the results, because they take a lot of time, irrespective of the results, the mother or the victim should come forward to report and show the kids that it's not okay to take that. It's not okay to hurt anyone. It's not okay to take hurt or get into violence. No. Yeah.
I think I agree with everything that's said, but I think we also need to take it a step further. First of all, I think we talked about blaming. You shouldn't ever blame yourself and think that it is your fault. No one has a right to touch you, abuse you, or hurt you in any way, whether it's a male or a female. No one has that right, including mental abuse as well. It's just as prevalent as physical abuse as well. But I think I touched upon other things also in the book, that we need to actually rally behind one another for a stronger law structure. We have to talk about the legal system as well. The legal system is there, but some of us don't know how to use it, and it's not strong enough yet. Bahrain is better than many other countries, but we're not there yet. We really need to focus a lot about the legal system now. Once you get the judicial party involved and the legal system involved, things start to switch automatically, because even the abuser will start to become a little bit more scared to abuse.
With the legal systems, there's often this idea that it's not something that everyone understands, and that the people who do understand it are a very segregated group. So how do you think we can help each other understand more about our legal systems and how to use them and how they benefit us?
One thing is, like, you're doing this great job, you can bring forward the legal forum here, put forward your questions, ask queries, let them give out their suggestions and the law that's happening there. Let this awareness continue with you guys started. I wish you the best.
I think it has to be a package. So you just don't have awareness. You will have awareness, and then there are several platforms for that. Then you will have the education system and several platforms for that. For example, I've recently learned that in Pakistan they're initiating an online university for ethics and morals. I don't have the link, I don't remember it just now, but I have recently come to know about it. And I think that's a great idea. And and also we have to understand that some of our children will get education from higher platforms, and some will go to government schools. But it has to be across the board. Everyone has to understand that. So it's not just one thing. It'll be awareness, education, I don't know the right word for it, but we call it tarbiyat, tarbiyat in Urdu. At home, so it'll have to be all these steps taken so that maybe 1 or 2 generations from now understand, and it's inbuilt,
And so based on that, I would like to ask you a question, Ms. Lodia. As you lead a prestigious women's association, what are your thoughts on the importance of female solidarity on the topic of violence against women, and how do you believe it would help to solve the problem?
Of course, women do tend to come together. When they have a case of a woman, recently we had somebody, and of course Pakistan Women's Association works more for charitable causes. So of course Shamsaha, we collaborate sometimes with Shamsaha as well. So the case went there. So you see, we're connected. So if something comes, we will help them with maybe the funds for it, or maybe the guidance for it, and someone else will take it on. However, this is not something just women can do together, because I think, as I said earlier, it's people in power and the legal system that has to change and has to add to this. So it will be everyone together to understand the problem and to take it forward. I'm not saying women can't do it. I totally don't think that women can't do it. But unfortunately, women are not everywhere. So it's only going to happen if we deal with this together. And I think more and more men are understanding this too. And so there are many, many organizations and examples that are helping.
Following on from what you just said about men and what Ms. Kanu said earlier about the importance of social media, throughout recent years, movements such as Me Too has taken a rise on the internet and encouraged female solidarity against male violence. Many men have taken this as an opportunity to assume that violence is a problem that should be tackled solely by those within the female community. What would you say to the men out there who argue that they have limited involvement in the overall elimination of violence against women? And this is open to anyone.
What is your question exactly? How do we answer men who? Please rephrase the question.
Okay, so there are a lot of men out there who believe that they have limited involvement within female violence and standing for solidarity with the women.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that? Do you believe that men have?
Yes, I do believe, because it's not all men the same. It happens with, like I said, it comes up from the home, basically, or from the environmental issues, situational issues. It just comes up with the mental health issues as well. I do believe that men are not all the same. And there are places where it's not only the women that are victims, there are also men who are victims. But that on a percentage of, the comparison, it is shown that men don't have much of complaining issues like how the women go through, because women play a different role. They have kids, and their responsibilities are different from men. Their psychological issues or the way of they take the violence is different from men. So what affects women is most that happens at the home, where they stay, and they always put them in one room.
And I just wanted to add something, that another thing that has to be ingrained again is the mental health of women or men, and it cannot also be a taboo while you're growing up, because women or even men, whatever their backgrounds are, their childhoods are, it is always there, and we suffer from that. As life is progressing, I think we see more of anxieties and depressions and fears, and I think and all of that put together, if you have a healthy mind, a woman is much stronger and more empowered. So I think that is another thing that has to go hand in hand with dealing with violence.
Yeah, I agree. I also think that I think I stated this to you earlier, that your generation is by far more confident. If we can talk about females right now, if we're talking about the female gender, your generation is by far more confident than maybe our generation.
Yes, and they're not wasting time on little petty things.
No, they're not. They are going out for what they want, what you want. You are the ones who are going to decide what your life will be. Your life journey is going to be decided by yourselves. And that is a very different choice than I think what we had.
Yes.
I'm not saying, obviously it's better, but I'm not saying we had a bad choice, but it was much more difficult for us. So I think your parents all did a wonderful job that they gave you. Our generation. You did a wonderful job that they gave you guys all this confidence, even though my daughter will say, no, it's me, and the confidence came from me, nothing to do with you. But we did instill this in you. We did believe in you. If you can look around, we did believe in you, right?
Yes.
We believed in the females around.
Give the trust.
Yes.
But you're a much better enabled generation than us.
Yes, we still had. We went 2 steps forward and went half a step behind, just not sure, because it's a patriarchal society. We were always continuously being told, yes, work, but just make sure your household's okay with you working. Don't leave the children. Make sure the children are. So everything that happens in the household is still your problem. Anything that happens negatively in the whole family, it's a mother's fault. Somehow she wasn't there for the kids,
So this. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So this thing where when the women of my generation got married, we were like, oh my God, we have such great in-laws. They're allowing us to work.
Yeah.
So that allowing, of course, I didn't need that, but a lot of women around me was. They're allowed to work. It doesn't need to be that. It needs to be, I'm getting married, I'm going to continue working. That mindset has to change.
Because Allah in its word says that you're being given control from the other person.
Yeah.
And even very recently I heard about, I was speaking to somebody and they said, I'm allowed to work as long as I can deal with the house as well. And I'm like, okay, you're allowed to work, but then both of you are working. So it should be mutual. And I think that will be, I think, one of the core things that your generation will deal with when your generation has partners.
Basically, a culture of respect should be created in, treating equally, irrespective of the gender, basic human respect, be it a domestic worker, be it a woman, a children, whoever it is, a respect should be there. That culture should be adopted. Yeah.
And I think I wanted to ask, based on that, we were speaking a lot about stigma and taboo, especially in schools. There are a lot of hyper-masculine cultures in which it's men supporting other men or men ignoring the actions of other men or boys in the case of schools. So how do you think to any students who are watching who see their friends acting in a way that could be dangerous or a red flag or a risk sign, how should they reach out to their friends and educate them on these values?
I think I can talk about, let's say, about careers, about work. I'm often interviewed, and when I'm asked how does it feel like to be a successful businesswoman, I look at them and my answer is, success has no gender. Why do you continuously look at me and say, as a woman, it's fantastic, you're allowed to be successful? It has no gender. So I think even in your home, even in schools and universities, I think the capable person should be running for office. I'm sure you guys have like student government, and it has nothing to do with gender. Merit. It's by merit. It's just who is more capable, like we fight for in the workplace. It was not easy for me to become a woman who's a CEO. The journey of it was not easy. It's the first and the most of the big family businesses. So I had to fight and prove that I am just as good as any man. So I don't think this generation will have it, but you have to fight for it, and you have to feel it from within, that you can't always let go and say, maybe, he can be president because maybe he might be better. If you as a woman a female feel like you can, you should. There's nothing that should hold you all back. Nothing at all. I mean, look at your lifestyle now. It's fantastic. We look at it and say, man, you guys have it easy, Wow.
And I get to hear from my children, why do we have to hear of these examples?
Yeah. You guys, nothing should hold you back. And I interviewed Generation Z for the book, and what I heard was fantastic. I was, flabbergasted. The strength that you all have, the feeling that you guys can voice anything you want is fantastic, and it shouldn't dissipate at any time, even later on in your life. life. You should, even as a female working in any business or in any family business, you should stand up for your right. You should not listen to a sibling, whether it's a female or a male. If you feel you deserve this, you should stand up for it. And that's what I have to say all the time to every female that comes to me from a business background asking me for information, for help.
I think that, of course, we have to be strong. Women have to be strong enough to stand up for themselves. But as I discussed about, for example, the third world countries or countries where women are not very powerful, a good family support is very important. So, for example, when I was I'm an architect and I was working in Pakistan, and there was this contractor I had a fight with who did some very wrong things. I was very scared, but my husband stood by me and he said, let's go and talk to the police and we call it the FIR, and let's do a case on him. And I was like, no, we can't do that. And he said, yes, you can do that. You see, so it is true that people in underprivileged countries or where women are not very powerful, it is very important for family support. Yes, we're lucky here. We're in an environment where women are very capable, but not everyone is. And as you all grow older, I think you would need to give that support to somebody else.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because that, for example, that example that you gave, your husband, he sort of used his confidence and his privilege as a man in society because he has that extra amount of security in your family support. And I think that's how it shows how the wider community gets involved in this. Everyone has a role to support women.
Yes.
Men can use their privilege and having more opportunities and having more confidence to uplift the women around them.
Because the next time round I didn't need it. It was the first time that I got that confidence, and the next time I didn't.
Adding to that point, we can introduce survival of the fittest. It's not the Darwin theory that I'm talking about, but there are two ways that people can fight for their rights or whatever they wish in their life. It's the passive way, going with the flow of life, taking up anything that's coming in their way, passively, smoothly, peacefully. There's another way to get it, that fight for your rights, like she did. She wanted to stand for what she wanted to do. So that's how we do it. So they go hand in hand. It's not that you have to choose one path and you leave the other rest of the things, doing nothing. You have to take and decide, use your potential skills to go smoothly where it has to, because sometimes it's not that you fight for it all the time and you get it. No, we won't. We have to take the path smoothly sometimes. So these two go hand in hand, and kids should remember to use these two skills. Yeah,
we completely agree. And I'm sure all the girls watching us in school this week will be very empowered by everything that's been said. So just a concluding question. So everyone watching, if they were to remember one key thing from this discussion, what do you all think that should be?
I would say believe in yourself.
Yeah, self-love.
That's the main obstacle, because then you can move forward. If you don't, you can't. Well, in everything in life.
Self-love doesn't really mean you put yourself first in everything, but you recognize yourself. You recognize your triggers, you recognize what makes you happier, you recognize what's happening inside you. And I think for everyone in our generation, it took such a long time to understand that. But I see the difference with all of you, be it men or women or boys or girls, that you recognize what you are first. And what makes you much more happier.
And there's no limits.
There's no limit.
You shouldn't put limits on yourself, and you shouldn't allow others to put limits on yourself. Because I've noticed it's only the insecure people that want to bring you down,
Yes.
and want to put limits and want to abuse you, right? I'm sure it's insecurity that does that.
And someone said something very interesting to me once, that a perpetrator or somebody who's violent, we look at him and we pity him, because he's already at his lowest standard. He's already lost everything. He has nothing. So
and the one thing that I would say is that speak for yourself.
Yes.
Come up first. The first step you take is going to be for you. No one else is going to take that step. Everybody can tell you where to go, put where their foot, but you have to do that first step. Take that first action for yourself. If you don't stand, no one else can be there with you.
yes.
Yeah.
And thank thank you so much to all of you for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Everybody who's watching understands the importance of speaking out, of looking to your friends around you, of providing support, and of dismantling the culture that affects so many people and makes them victims worldwide. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you
for giving us such a
very much.
perspective.
Thank you very much. Thank you.